Hi, I'm Dr. David Rowe, and I have a special treat today. I'm here with Dr. John Incledon. And John, thank you so much for sharing this with us. This is our topic about the Gonstead system. And John is a Gonstead doctor that practices maybe about half an hour north of here.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the town is?
Fishkill, New York.
Fishkill, New York. Now, I call him Dr. John Incledon. I've actually known him since the day he was born. His dad was a really close friend of mine and an amazingly talented chiropractor. He has since passed. But I knew Dr. John as John. But tonight we'll just call you Dr. John Incledon. Good, fantastic, good. We'll talk a little bit about your dad and his practice as we go. But first, one of the things I always think is interesting about when chiropractors go to chiropractic college, they look at the techniques, and we're taught several different techniques, and they generally gravitate to them. Now, your dad was an amazing Gonstead doctor, so you would have really had to break form to find a different technique. But what besides dad, what really got you inspired or interested in the Gonstead system?
Right. So obviously, growing up under Gonstead chiropractic care, that's what chiropractic was to me. That was all that I known pretty much until I went to chiropractic college and had seen other techniques. Now, at the school that I went to, there was not much in terms of a Gonstead education. And so I was introduced to, a lot of those other techniques. But the thing that kept drawing me back to Gonstead is I just believe that it is the most complete technique.
As a system,
exactly. From the analysis to the technique itself to just patient management, I do think that it provides a lot. Not to say that other techniques can't provide, excellent patient care, but I think it's just so well-rounded. And of course, the specificity of it, the results that, Gonstead doctors get is something that is very, very special. And I think unique to the technique.
Yeah. The word specificity comes up a lot. Like if you talk to most Gonstead doctors and you say, tell me a little bit about Gonstead, they're going to say the word specific very early in the conversation. And we're talking about the specificity of both the analysis, like how do we find the subluxation, and then the specificity on how do we adjust it. It's really interesting and Gonstead is really an intersegmental technique. And we would use terms like this, but to get it really what Dr. Gonstead really focused on was how do you pick out the subluxation? How does the relationship of one vertebra to the vertebra that it's sitting on top of, what's the misalignment? And that was really his model of the subluxation. He's really looking at what's the relationship of these two vertebrae. It's not really a posture technique. It's not a muscle technique. It is a individual intersegmental technique saying, how does this vertebra relate to that vertebra? And how does that affect the disc between them and the nerve? And that's really the focus of the Gonstead technique. Now, specificity, if you practice Gonstead for a long period of time and you watch the efforts that Gonstead doctors put into being specific, it's profound. And the more we get into it, the longer we do it, the more that one thing just keeps coming up and keeps getting honed. So just tell a little bit about your healthcare as the child of a super Gonstead doctor. What was it like growing up in a house where, chiropractic was the number one, not even question, the number one form of healthcare that was being used?
Yeah, chiropractic was the healthcare being used. I fractured my tibia when I was 2 years old. That was, other than having a physical for youth sports, for athletics, that was the only time that I had gone to a doctor's office was for a fracture. Anything from if a cold came up, which was very rare, to a headache, again, very, very rare. Chiropractic was the answer to that. Maybe once a year you have the sniffles. It was not something that was a common occurrence in our household for myself or my sister. To be sick. We were never under, never took antibiotic or anything like that. There wasn't a need to. And on top of that, on top of using chiropractic care as, a modality, a treatment if we were sick. The biggest thing was wellness. And so that bleeds.
That's why it worked.
Right. Exactly. That bleeds into philosophy on life in terms of living a holistic life, living a natural life, as natural as can be in the 21st century. You're I think more gracious. I think that extends into gratitude and that kind of spiritual aspect as well. And especially, as I was getting older, you realize pretty early on that maybe you're a little bit different than other kids.
To say the least, yes. In terms of my friends, this one has aspirin and tinfoil in his pocket, and this one got this, and they're dealing with it very differently than our parents when my dad was a chiropractor too. So very differently than we were having the experience at home, which is, and I think you touched on a really important point there. Because we were under regular care and because your dad was adjusting you regularly, that was always foremost on his mind, then it decreased the traumas and the infections and the missed school days. And basically you grew up not just with chiropractic, but also your dad was very into nutrition. Your dad was a naturalist by heart. He was an outdoors guy, and he was always training, and he was always working out, and he spent a lot of time, effort, energy thinking about health and wellness, not only for his patients, of course, but also for his family. Yeah. Were you vaccinated as a kid?
I was not.
Yeah. It's interesting. And once again, as thinking about what year were you born?
1997.
So 97, it's a rarity. I mean, there are children, but most of them would either have not been vaccinated because of religious reasons, or that the household would have been so committed to a wellness lifestyle, which is, God bless him. And your dad was always like if I saw him, just a moment for a social, if we just ran into each other, it would be, it didn't matter where we were. He's like adjusting. I'm like, we don't have any tables. He's like, let's get a chair or a park bench. And he's going to get adjusted. He was, always working on his own health as well. And so he created that environment in that household. And there was a table in the house. Of course, he had his office, but there's always a table in the house, and he's always checking. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so then you go to chiropractic college. Now, it's interesting. The school that you went to, New York Chiropractic College, is not a Gonstead school. You chose it because?
I chose it because when I was making the decision to go to chiropractic college, I was between a few schools. I was finishing up my last semester of undergraduate college, and I needed to figure out my requirements, what classes I needed to take to get in, to get accepted into the chiropractic college. And some of the other schools that I was looking at were a little bit slow to get back to me. New York Chiropractic College was very, very quick, and I needed to make a decision. I needed to sign up for my classes. And so that's how I ended up there. Looking back at it, I'm grateful for the experience
because it's a really good basic science school. It's a really good clinical diagnostic school. It's not our favorite school in terms of chiropractic. Yes, but and I'm not saying anything disparaging about it, but just in terms of the schools that we support, because they're much more chiropractic, straight philosophy.
Right.
Life Chiropractic College in Georgia, Sherman, Palmer, they would be the schools, Life West schools that we would naturally more gravitate and send students to.
Right.
I'm going to get this on record here, but so when I talked to Dad, I said, where's John going to school? And he said, New York. And I'm like, what? And he said, he wants to be close to Amber. Now, so he's thinking the driving thing is your love, which now I think it would be good to say this today. You guys are getting married. So whatever that played into it was well played as a young man knew the gallery.
It all works out. Right?
It all works
out how it's supposed to.
That's right. And it was also that you had a big advantage because you had been exposed to so much Gonstead, not only as a patient, but Dad already started to show you technique when you were even just thinking about going to school. Right. So tell me a little bit about that.
So throughout various times in my life, when I had thought about what I want to do when I get big, chiropractic always was around. And people ask me all the time, do you feel like your dad pushed you to become a chiropractor? And I can say wholeheartedly, no, not at all. If there was ever a moment that I said I want to be a chiropractor, he was 100% in, and he just wanted me to succeed. And he was like, whatever we need to do to succeed, we'll do it. I would go to seminars, thinking back to growing up in the chiropractic lifestyle, not missing school because of illness. I probably missed more school going to chiropractic seminars than due to sickness, due to the common cold or anything like that.
Because he knew that exposure was going to pay dividends. Yeah.
But probably around the beginning of high school, 15 years old, maybe when I was getting closer to making a decision about where I wanted to go to college or what I wanted to do, that's when we started to get a bit more into it. And my dad had started showing me how to adjust, and on him, he was, of course, my first teacher, my greatest mentor, personally and chiropractically as well. And after learning and getting comfortable on what to look for within the spine, within the body, within the Gonstead system, I started to branch out and just my sister and some other family members. And I think it was a senior in high school, the first time that we had come down to Rowe Chiropractic office for a Gonstead class. Exactly. So I was, 17 years old. I don't know. I don't think anybody's beat that record for showing up the class yet.
So now, what year so just do the math, the arithmetic for me what year do you think that was?
2014 or 15,
okay,
depending on when that was.
So we started that class in 97. It's literally, we just had class last night.
Right.
So we've got essentially almost like we're getting close to, we're getting close to 30 years of that, if I've got my arithmetic right. Yeah. And we've been teaching this class on Thursday night, Gonstead doctors getting together, sharing both practice tips, helping each other grow as practitioners. I've been leading the class. I got it started, Dr. Patrick Ryan, and now Dr. Mendez, and there's several young practitioners, Dr. Lee, who you brought with him, who's your college roommate, Dr. Cooper. There's a lot of guys that have now joined in. Am I missing anybody? Of course, Dr. Greenspan has been there, Dr. Stacy Assa. There's a group of people that have been there for a long period of time. They come in and out of the class, but this has been like a home base for us to help each other improve our technique, and also just encouraging each other's growth in practice. And this class is now almost 30 years. It's
right.
Amazing to think about it. Now, even though you're an hour and a half away, you still come on a fairly regular basis. You're still coming down. Yeah, it's great. Where do we learn most of our Gonstead? Like, if you said, I know Dad mentored me, I know we've been to Rowe's class, but if you really look at it, say, like, what was the best teaching mechanism in the Gonstead system?
Yeah. Mount Horeb, Wisconsin.
And I have to say myself, we've practiced all this ourselves, but we literally give the kudos, give the appreciation for the doctors that Dr. Gonstead taught that kept the clinic going. And we went there both as chiropractic students and then early in practice, but we never stopped. And I know that I've been to Madison, Wisconsin, which is, it's just east of that in Mount Horeb. I've flown into the Madison airport well over 100 times. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's probably close to 150 in terms of how many times over the 43 years of my practice. We used to rent a van as students and drive up from Georgia to go there and spend a weekend and just continuing to expose ourselves and to refine the technique. It's a really interesting culture, because if you are interested, you're committed, Gonstead doctors across the board open their heart, and give their time to teach the next generation. And that keeps going on. And now I'll go to class there. We go to Wisconsin once or twice a year still 43 years later for me. And, for how many years in practice now?
Just over 5.
Just over 5. So just go there regularly. And now I'm being taught, like, I'll go to a class where there's a practitioner that he might have been in my class 20 years ago. Now I'm sitting in his class, refining some piece of the system that we just keep working on. Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. So in practice, and I'm really transparent about this. I'm a Gonstead doctor, and I do a lot of other technique. I do another technique called chiropractic biophysics, and I do a lot of that. Are you doing anything else in the practice in terms of adjusting that's outside of the Gonstead system?
No, I'm trying to follow the system as closely as possible. Yeah. Speaking of the doctors at when you go to the seminars at Mount Harvard, you go there and you get inspired because you can, whoever you talk to, you can always, reflect on yourself and see ways to improve and ways to uphold the Gonstead system as true as possible. Now, obviously, that's kind of a funny thing, right, about the Gonstead system is Clarence, passed away going on almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, he passed in 78.
Right?
78.
So
this is Dr. Clarence Gonstead, who developed a technique, and the technique is named after. And he was just getting better results than other practitioners. And people said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Pay me for a day, and I'll teach you, and I'll come to the clinic, and I'll teach you." And it started a decades-long tradition of Dr. Gonstead teaching other chiropractors what he was doing. And because they were asking him questions about it, he had to really define it. He had ideas in his head, and then Dr. Herbst took the monumentous task of getting it written down and getting it all cataloged. And the Gonstead chapters are an amazing way. Now, listen, not every piece of this technique is been researched, but clinically, it's amazing in terms of what it actually does. And the better you get at the system, the more you can help people. Yeah. Super. So you practice a straight Gonstead system. And I knew that I was kind of getting it under hand lock, but I think maybe there's something in there. Mm-hmm. Now, and Dr. Gonstead had as part of the system nutrition, and he had, he was a naturalist, and he was actually a naturopath. He employed other ways to help people. Right. But in terms of the focus, it's 99.9% chiropractic. I think sometimes my audience gets like, Rowe keeps talking about the vertebrae misaligns and it gets stuck and it puts pressure on the nerve. When you explain to your patients, a new patient that comes in, and they say, why, I'm going to come an hour away from where your clinic is to where that person lives. They're going to drive by 100 chiropractors. Why do they go to a Gonstead doctor? Like, what makes it special?
Right. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation, specificity. Okay. If we're talking about, why you're maybe driving past 50 or 100 different chiropractors coming to the office, that specificity is something that very few, if any other techniques, I think, stress as strongly as the Gonstead system does. In terms of what we're doing at our office, I think that our emphasis on overall wellness, not necessarily focused just on symptom, which is important. Obviously, somebody who's coming through your door with a certain symptom wants that symptom addressed, but learning ways to not only address that symptom, but then express optimal health and vitality on top of that is something that's very important, something that I stress to all the practice members coming into the office.
That's an interesting fine line that we all have as practitioners have to tiptoe through. Like our highest ideal for our patients is for them to be as healthy as they can be for them and their family from today forward. Mm-hmm. And we still, even in an age of where there's a wellness revolution going on, we still meet a lot of patients on the first day because they feel like they've lost their good health and there is a symptom, like you're saying, there's some kind of a body signal and they want that addressed. So it's amazing. Dr. Gonstead, and it's one of the reasons why we keep this part of the technique so strong in our practice. He was amazing at making the connection between the nerve pressure and the symptom, between the nerve pressure and the condition. When we look at the Gonstead notes and we look at the different, he dealt with patients with all kinds of conditions and he was successful and helped so many people. And he gave us a cookbook, dare I say, where you could say it's common that in this condition, you'll find a subluxation, a misaligned vertebrae that's causing nerve pressure at that vertebra. And it's common that when we look, we say, boy, he's actually right. It gets us on the right path. Now, he also, Gonstead was very explicit about find the subluxation, accept it where you find it. So he's saying it could be anywhere, but we commonly see it in this area for that one. Find the subluxation, accept it where you find it, correct it, and then leave it alone. And leave it alone is a really interesting thing in our model, because we're also not just dealing with patients with symptoms, but we have a much bigger concept in the way that you receive your chiropractic care, the way that I received it from my dad, where it was a lifetime lifestyle. And for us, that is like the highest form, is to use these very specific techniques of spinal care to locate subluxations, locate interference in the nervous system, correct it, and keep it that way for a lifetime. And I know that you've been doing that for yourself, and we're going to see me adjusting you, and which I think is an amazing thing. I always think about the concept of physician heal thyself. If a patient says to me, like, do you get adjusted? Some of your patients say that to you?
Absolutely, all the time.
Even if I didn't, exactly. Of course I get adjusted. Of course I did.
I had a patient today actually come in and they said, "Oh, it's Friday. You go get adjusted today, don't you?"
Yeah, it's not today you come down to see me. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes. And that's really an amazing thing that we get such great care as Gonstead doctors in terms of adjusting his spine.
Who, by the way, I'll shout out, this patient was my dad's maybe 6th or 9th patient all the way back in 1986, and is still coming in today.
Because something your dad said to him,
right?
And then the experience, this guy's like, you know what? That effort, using family resources to create a healthier me with this, he's like, that's worth it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for a long time. Right. So God bless your dad. And this is a really a great story. You were in chiropractic college when Dad got sick.
Yep.
And you were early in school, right?
Right. Yeah. I just finished my second semester.
Yes, finished second semester. Dad gets sick. And whether you were always like, do I go back and practice with him? He had big boots to fill in terms of to practice with him. And I know it's that early on you're thinking, maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Right.
But your dad had mentored so many chiropractors that he was a North Star for a lot of chiropractors and for them to develop their practice. Now, when he got sick, some other chiropractors stepped in and kept the practice going so that when you got out of school, there was still a practice there. It was a solid 3.5 years or 3 years later, but that practice would have gone to nothing, because you needed somebody to help. And Dr. Marion, maybe who were the practitioners?
Yeah, Dr. Mary Rada was an absolute all-star and really, really helped kind of carry that torch while I was finishing up school. But Dr. John Marr, Dr. Jim Sedaris, Dr. Giovanni Mazzarelli, I hope I'm not missing anybody, but those were, I know, the main guys that were really, really helping, keep things going until I was able to get back in.
Yeah, another example about how the Gonstead kind of family supports each other, and we see this in many different situations. And by the way, there's some practitioners that when they finish their practice, they set up like a teaching center and they make their money from it. And I'm like, bravo. But there's also a long history in the Gonstead system about giving back, because we know, like, there's no way, even though I do this, the chiropractic biophysics, and I'm doing this other work, there is no way I would have the success in practice that I've enjoyed if I had not early on said, you know what, I'm going to go to that Gonstead clinic and I'm going to study there. There's no way I would be the practitioner that I am now without that. And so that gave me the impetus to go ahead and start the Thursday night class with Dr. Ryan and Dr. Mondo Powell, my nephew. That's when we started this class. We said, let's get together on a regular basis. And Dr. Jerry Ryan, she was there right at the beginning with us, where we said, like, let's give it back. And you see this over and over. At Life West, there's a bunch of practitioners they basically, when they got trained by Pete O'Hara, he said, I don't want any money from you. What you have to do is you have to go back to the school at Life West and teach the young students Gonstead. And that we see this over and over. It's really amazing how much Gonstead doctors help the young practitioners, and help all practitioners, young or old, and just so they keep the system going. Fantastic. What do you feel in terms of like your evolution as a Gonstead doctor? Okay, tell me like a little bit about that. As the here's you got this wonder kid who's got like a natural talent. When I told you when you first got into school, I could see natural talent in what you were doing. That but Dad gets exposed to stuff early. It's 5 years later. Like, what do you think? What's it feel like?
Yeah, it depends on the day.
Yeah, I love it. For me too, in 47 years, that's right. The day and the patient.
What I tell myself is the best hitters in baseball are still striking out or hitting into an out, 7 out of 10 times, right? So it depends on the day, but between class on Thursday nights and between going to Mount Horeb and to the Gonstead seminars and GMI seminars and between practice, I can't even really fathom, how much more confident I am. But again, that just boils down to practice, to repetition. Yeah. This is certainly not an easy system it's not an easy system to become efficient in, let alone master it.
Absolutely. Not.
And
I just literally, if I could say it like this, 43 years into it for me, I get humbled every day.
Right.
And it's one of the wonderful things about it, because it keeps it absolutely exciting and interesting. Right. That I'm like, I can still get better at this. When I go back there and I see sometimes a younger practitioner or maybe a more seasoned practitioner even than me, I'm like, oh, he actually is doing that better than me. Right. Like, I love the way he does that. And then I go home and I incorporate that into the practice. It's, as we're constantly just climbing uphill, becoming better practitioners, still there's so much to learn. And the biggest impetus of the whole thing, the biggest driving force is to help people. Right. And that was what Gonstead was really about, is that he had been sick, had been helped by a chiropractor, and then he dedicated his life to helping patients through natural chiropractic care, which is just, that legacy. And I'd say it, that's a really perfect word for it. That legacy just goes on and on through the system. Yeah. And do you think that, where do you see your future in terms of practice?
You keep going until you can't go anymore. Something that I do think about a lot, reflect on a lot is where do you want to end up? And you had mentioned, something about my dad and about the people that he mentored and the people that he, inspired to become chiropractors. And to me, I think that there would be no bigger honor, above having a hugely successful practice, seeing and helping a ton of people, which is, obviously a huge goal for most chiropractors, but to say that you inspired one person to become a chiropractor, I think would be just the greatest honor, let alone if you can inspire, multiple people.
Some guys are really good at that, and they just keep talking about it. They're like, they'll say, "You belong in chiropractic college." I've got a few of them. I've got Cortez under my belt. I helped with Dr. Freeze, who's now our associate. She's in class with us. I'm not sure. I hope I'm not missing any others. Actually, Dave Greenberg in North Carolina, he was a patient of mine. So I don't have a big, long line, but I think just told me I'm going to get back to work on that one, get some more kids into school. Fantastic. All right, man, I totally appreciate this. And I appreciate, your participation. And I know as a 4-decade practitioner looking at who we're kind of leading the profession to young practitioners. And I've got, I'm going to go until I can't. I'm still getting better. I'm a better practitioner this year than I was last year because of the way that we educate, because of the way that the culture's set up. But I'm just going to keep going literally until I physically can. But I feel really confident in terms of where especially our technique is going in terms of the development and people like using the system as taught and then saying, what does the modern day research look to support that? And are there ways with modern day research that we can say, could we actually make the technique better? So I feel really, confident about what's going on. Thank you so much. God bless you, man. I really appreciate it. And I just one other thing, just before you leave, your mom, amazing through. She worked in the office with your dad early on. Yep. And even when she's a teacher, and when she went back to to teaching, or she, got her career going. She always had her finger in that. She would always I know he would be like, yeah, this thing's disorganized. And Carol, your mom, goes back and he goes, she just, whips it back into shape. And, so I mean, that's a big thing. And then tell me about like how she inspired and also supported you.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, chiropractic really it's a family affair, right? I mean, how many chiropractors do you know where there's something else, whether it's a spouse helping out in the office, a spouse being a chiropractor.
Claire, my life partner, Claire, is, my practice runs because of her.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, something that I think is pretty unique to chiropractic. You don't really have the opportunity to do that in a lot of other fields. But in terms of my mom, yeah, she always kind of kept my dad in line because my dad was so busy.
And that was the difficult being.
Yeah, exactly. But because he was so busy, so passionate about chiropractic and helping his people, he needed that kind of extra help within the office.
The organization.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And so even by the time, like you said, my mom, had my sister and I had kind of gotten a little bit older, and my mom was able to go back to work. She always, like you said, had her finger on the pulse there, and would always lend a hand. And even with me, to this day, she'll whenever she has the opportunity to come stop by the office, she does. And
looking around what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. That's another thing though that's so funny, is that taking over the practice and having these patients that are still coming in 30 plus years later, again, it's a family. Not only the family in the office, the related family in the office, but the extended family of that community. And so, everyone asks about my mom. They get excited when my mom's in the office and they're able to see her. So
in our family, we've got 4 graduates. Obviously, my dad, Dr. Martin Rowe, he was the first chiropractor. He inspired me to go. My brother Steven, my nephew Mondo, and guys, they've found different paths in their life in terms of where they've put, but that education in chiropractic college in terms of the naturalist, the understanding that the body's self-healing and self regulating, and that we live and we heal through our nerve system. I like your shirt here. It says, this is your brain. I think you want to turn it around, and that's just black and white, but this is our brain in chiropractic. Yeah, fantastic. And so we've got chiropractic and chiropractic families, and that's what they make me think. Brother, I really appreciate it. And yep, we'll just keep pushing.
Thank you. I want to thank you for not only for taking care of me and my family chiropractically, but also for your inspiration, for your mentorship. 43 years into chiropractic, you give me a lot to look forward to and a lot to aspire to be. So thank you very much.